I didn't make my bed today. My sheets are literally coming off of my mattress and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to make my bed. I really don't want to make it today. But hey y'all, I am back and today we are reading more about haunted asylums and hospitals. And I'm very excited because I love this series. I love learning about these places. I feel like it's really interesting. I'm really out of breath, dude. I'm so out of shape, it is unbelievable. I can walk from the kitchen back to my bedroom and be completely out of breath and be like gasping for fucking air. I don't even know. But we're just gonna get started because I have nothing else to say to you. Other than I'm only gonna have one video this week because I'm incredibly addicted to Stardew Valley. Like, it is an unhealthy addiction. I played Stardew Valley a long time ago with a couple of friends and I had like my own little farm and stuff. I used to stream it. And I stopped playing for a while and I'm not really sure why, but I started playing a couple days ago and I have played for like 10 hours every single day. Like, I cannot physically stop myself. It was so hard to get off to film this video. Like, I was playing this morning and I was like, okay, I need to work, like I need to get a video done, I need to do something this week, I need to do something. So here I am, taking a break from Stardew Valley because I love you guys so much and I'm filming a video even though I really want to play Stardew Valley. And then on Friday I'm going to the zoo with a couple of friends, so I won't have a video out because usually I film on Fridays and so I will be busy on Friday, so I'll only have one video this week. I apologize. But now we're going to get started and I'm going to scoot you on back. So this first place is called the Pripyat Hospital. Sorry if I say that wrong. The MSCH 126 Medico-Sanitary, better known as Pripyat Hospital, once served the workers of Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Built in the 1970s with a 400 patient capacity, the state-of-the-art facility was the only hospital for Pripyat's 50,000 citizens. No one really knew how important the hospital would become on April 26, 1986. Around midnight that day, Chernobyl engineers performed a routine test on Reactor 4. Then, something went terribly wrong, causing the worst nuclear accident in history to date. The nuclear fallout from Chernobyl disaster was 4 times worse than the Hiroshima bombing, though few realized it during the hours and days that followed the disaster. Without knowing the nature of the accident, firefighters responded wearing protective suits while dousing the fire. Not long after, they were all rushed to Pripyat Hospital after being exposed to lethal doses of radiation. It was here that most of the 47 accident workers died. No one knows exactly what happened that night in 1986, what went wrong, how the reactor shattered so suddenly. While it's easy to see how the long-abandoned town gives people the creeps today, accounts of paranormal activity surrounded this town before the disaster in question. In the week leading up to the infamous explosion on April 26th, many reported seeing the most unnatural bird-like creature in the sky. The black monster had a 20-foot wingspan, sometimes appearing like a headless man, other times with red, glaring eyes. The creature would later be named the Black Bird of Chernobyl. People who spotted the creature around Pripyat were later tormented by horrific nightmares and received mysterious, threatening phone calls before the disaster. Then, in the immediate aftermath of the explosion, several emergency workers claimed to see the winged beast circling through the smoke of the fire. Maybe the first responders who claimed to see the monster were losing their senses due to the intense radiation poisoning. Or maybe the Black Bird of Chernobyl brought some kind of reckoning on the people of Pripyat, while delivering not-so-subtle warnings in the weeks leading up to it. No one can say for sure. The chilling creature hasn't been seen in the ghost town since. Paranormal buffs can't help but draw a connection between the Black Bird of Chernobyl and the Mothman seen in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Also described as a large winged creature with red eyes, the Mothman was seen throughout Point Pleasant in the days leading up to the collapse of Silver Bridge on December 15, 1968. Witnesses also experienced terrifying nightmares and phone threats after encountering the creature. The similarities are striking, and it's unlikely that Ukrainian power plant workers had heard of the Mothman legend. Was this winged creature delivering some kind of warning to Pripyat and Point Pleasant towns that were worlds apart but both heading for disaster? After the initial incident, citizens of Pripyat were slowly evacuated over the next few days. Officials told them they could return shortly, so many left their possessions behind. In reality, they would never go back. Almost overnight, Pripyat had become an enormous ghost city and had remained that way for 28 years. The hospital, once considered so modern, now lies untouched, filled with dirty and broken furniture. Writing on the roof reads, "Health of the people, riches of the country." But it turns out the hospital could do little to keep the people of Pripyat healthy. Outside of the 47 deaths from first response workers, the disaster of Chernobyl had more long-term effects. Children who were living in Pripyat at the time had now reported more than 6,000 cases of thyroid cancer due to radiation poisoning. 9 of them have died so far. As radiation levels have reduced enough to make it safe for short visits to Pripyat, it's become popular for tourists and adventurers to visit the largest ghost town in the world. However, the hospital itself still has its dangers. In the basement, you can find all the suits worn by firefighters who responded first during the disaster. Even after 28 years, they still carry a lethal dose of radiation. It's generally believed that the ghost town of Pripyat is surely haunted, and visitors to the hospital in particular often feel like they are being watched. People claim to see apparitions or shadows, spirits of the victims of the Chernobyl disaster, most likely the firefighters who were rushed to the hospital from Reactor 4. Though it would seem not all of them made it quite that far. A chilling account by I can't say that name to save my fucking life. Andrei Koroskov, a nuclear physicist who visited Chernobyl in 1997, suggests that some still might be trapped in the reactor. While taking some readings near the sarcophagus of the reactor, he heard the distinct sound of someone screaming for help within the reactor core. And then this is in quotes, so this is what he was explaining to them. I ran upstairs to tell someone, but they said that when I entered the reactor control room, I was the first person to open that door in 3 years, and the only way to get inside the old reactor is through the doors I came in through. If someone had gone inside the reactor when I was not looking, they would have tripped on an alarm that goes off when the reactor door is opened mechanically. He shrugged off the sounds and went back to work, but later that evening while his team was eating dinner outside the reactor, a floodlight suddenly turned on in the same room he had heard the cries for help. They stared in awe, wondering how anyone could be inside. Just as they decided that it might be a power surge, the light vanished. Ghost hunters have since inspected Reactor 4 and, to their shock, found a human figure on their thermal imaging camera inside of the reactor. During the chaos of that fateful day in April, rushing the poisoned firefighters to Pripyat Hospital had been a futile effort, though it would seem that some of the men suffered an even worse fate, locked inside the infamous Reactor 4, where they remain to this day. That has to be the most interesting one we've read yet because it's part of Chernobyl. That was like my favorite one I think that we've read so far in this like entire series. But this next one is called the Kuhn Memorial State Hospital. In 1832, a smallpox outbreak left the community of Vicksburg, Mississippi in desperate need of help. Not long after, a small hospital was born, located between what is now downtown Vicksburg and the Vicksburg National Military Park. At the time it was built, no one had any idea what tragedies and horrors would plague the hospital throughout its long history. Despite its role as a place of healing, dark events have followed Kuhn Memorial State Hospital like the plague. The modest hospital would go on to serve the wounded during the Civil War until the state took over operations in 1971, renaming it the State Charity Hospital at Vicksburg. Tragedy struck in 1878 as yellow fever wreaked havoc on the patients and staff. 16 doctors and 6 Catholic Sisters of Mercy lost their lives to the illness, while the number of patients who died remains unknown. But the hospital persevered, hosting the University of Mississippi's first medical school in 1910 and opening a wing to house Confederate veterans. Then, in 1918, a mysterious fire, still unexplained to this day, destroyed most of the annex, but the hospital rebuilt again, continuing to serve the sick and wounded of Vicksburg. In 1954, it received its first stroke of real luck when an elderly man named Lee Kuhn passed away and left his $400,000 estate to the hospital. The money was used for further expansion, and the hospital was renamed Kuhn Memorial State Hospital, the name it carries to this day. The hospital went on to serve all sorts of patients and people. The 4th floor became a minimum security prison. Inmates were required to perform menial tasks for the staff, such as clerking and cleaning. The Confederate Veterans Annex was specialized for patients with mental disabilities, while the pest house contained patients with infectious diseases. For once, the hospital thrived. But despite its utility to the community, it was closed in 1989 due to political and funding issues. For more than 2 decades, Kuhn Memorial State Hospital laid empty, useless. The buildings crumbled and rusted, the interior molded. And like any empty building with easy access points, it attracted the attention of curiosity seekers and paranormal researchers. America was a volatile place during the early years of the hospital's operation. A combination of war and primitive medical services ensured that many lost their lives at Kuhn. Ghost hunters searched for any lost souls that may have lingered, and were often surprised with how easily they were found. Though, when 2 ghost hunters entered the hospital in June 2015, they discovered something even more shocking than the spirits and apparitions they were searching for. In the building, they stumbled upon the body of Sharon Wilson, a 69-year-old woman who had been reported missing only 12 hours before. They called the police, who found the death to be a homicide. Wilson had been murdered in the hospital shortly before the 2 ghost hunters started their excursion. 2 men were arrested quickly when they were discovered driving Wilson's car. No one knows exactly what happened to Wilson or why. The case is pending today. What started out as spooky fun and games for paranormal researchers in an old building with a dark history became even more tragic. A roof of the front building started to collapse, prompting the state to talk seriously about demolishing the dilapidated complex. News reports from July 2015 say that on August 3rd, the historic hospital will be gone for good. David Childers, co-founder of the Mississippi Paranormal Research Institute, who conducted several ghost hunts in the hospital, agreed with the decision to demolish the building. There are open elevator shafts, black mold, asbestos, debris, and people ought to stay away from that place, he told the Clarion Ledger. Some spirits just need to be left alone. And that one was really short, so I'm going to read about one more. This is the Old Mental Hospital. Hong Kong is often viewed as one of the most modern cities in the world, full of new buildings with innovative designs. That's one of the reasons that a Victorian-style structure named the Old Mental Hospital is bound to get some strange looks from passerbys, found right in the middle of the city. But if you dig just a little deeper into the past of the historic building, you'll find a lot of other, more sinister reasons why the old mental hospital stands out from the rest. The original building was built in 1892 in the Sai Ying Pun area of Hong Kong. At 9 stories tall, it served as housing for the European nursing staff of the close by Civil Hospital until the World War II. But like most wartime facilities that were established with the best intentions, the hospital was later repurposed for a much darker task. According to urban legend, the Japanese used the hospital as a makeshift prison and execution hall during their occupation of Hong Kong. This may have been true, as the Japanese commonly repurposed war hospitals to house anyone on the wrong side, or anyone they suspected of anti-Japanese sentiment during that time. Rumor has it that many heads rolled to the floor in the House of Healing, but only after a slew of torturous interrogation tactics. After the war was over, the old mental hospital was again repurposed into a mental institution, where it gets the modern rendition of its name. In 1947, the hospital was the only one of its type in Hong Kong, which is unsettling considering the city was home to 500,000 people at the time. Once Hong Kong got better on providing mental health facilities, the hospital was then diminished to a day treatment center for psychiatric outpatients. That it remained from 1961 to 1971. The intention was to reopen the building for some new purpose after that, but 2 devastating fires believed to be started by trespassers made the building uninhabitable. For 20 years after shutting down, the building remained unoccupied. Its historical architecture and expansive dark halls drew attention to anyone who saw it, especially the local teenagers and drug addicts who visited the nearby methadone clinic. As the building fell further and further into disrepair, people started reporting strange happenings, unwelcome reminders of the horrors of the war. The locals started calling it the Haunted House in High Street, named after the road it was built on, inadvertently choosing the perfect name for a ghost story. Most of the ghost sightings you hear about in old, dilapidated buildings consist of disembodied whispers, distorted apparitions, and other explainable occurrences. Often, no one can say for sure whether they really saw something or not. That was never the case at the old mental hospital. People have reported time and again seeing the clear figure of a mysterious, devil-like man dressed in traditional Chinese clothing. He commonly lurked on the 2nd floor and could have been confused for a local man hoping to scare people with a creepy costume. That is, until he would summarily burst into flames shortly after being spotted, etching his image even further into the minds of unwanted visitors. Still, others have had the fright of their lives witnessing headless poltergeists running through the hallways in the dead of night. Could these be the troubled spirits of those tortured and executed during World War II? Many wonder. After far too many break-ins and unending reports of ghostly encounters had started giving the neighborhood a bad name, the old mental hospital was gutted and redeveloped as the Sai Ying Community Complex in 2001. Now, the only Victorian facade remains of what was once a dark and mysterious testament of the World War II. According to Haider Kikaboy, co-founder of Walk-In Hong Kong, people who drive by the building still claim to hear ghostly voices, chilling screams, and visions of spirits, despite the building's current role as a community complex. It would seem that gutting old mental was not enough to quell the cries and tantrums of the building's troubled spirits. Hong Kong recently classified the old mental hospital as a Grade 1 historic building, so the complex and all of its residents are here to stay. That is all I'm going to read for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I love reading about these places. I find it really interesting, and I really hope you guys do too. I am going to go edit this video and then play more Stardew Valley. I love y'all. I will see you in the next one. Bye! It really is a problem. It really is a problem. I have, me and my sister even have a co-op, so when she gets off work, we play on the co-op, but I spend every waking second of my day playing Stardew Valley, and it's a problem. It's a problem. Okay, see ya.